have to end it there. And from the lakeside county of Kisumu, we now take you to my colleague Brian George, who is in City Center. Brian George, over to you.
Thank you so much, Kevin Ogutu. Thank you for that, very riveting coverage of what the city of Kisumu expect on the budget this year. But we have been talking about the budget the whole week, the whole day. Kenyans are just seeing the budget 2021-2022. What is this budget? How do we even get to the place of concluding that we need 3.66 trillion shillings for the financial year 2021-2022? So that budget, 3.66 trillion, of course, is one of the biggest budgets we'll ever have as a nation right here. And it loosely translates to about 10 billion shillings for the next financial year spent on a daily basis. Yes, you got that right. 3.66 trillion shillings translates to, for 365 days, translates to just 10 billion shillings that is being spent on a daily basis. But how did we get here? Now, initially, the process of budget making was a reserve of the National Treasury only. Back then, the ministers for finance, right from James Gishuru, who was the very first minister for finance we ever had at the time of independence, until the time when Ambassador Robinson Jero Githai left the wings of power as minister for finance, marking the end of the old constitutional dispensation, ushering in the new one. The constitutional making process, the budget making process was a reserve of the National Treasury. Today, that is not the case. The public has to be involved, which is why we are here in the streets today to take sentiments from the public on what they expect on the budget. The Auditor General, of course, has to be involved. Why should the Auditor General be involved? Because funds are being taken to the devolved units in the counties, and other factions like Parliament also has to be involved. That is the Budgets and Appropriations Committee. And finally, the Executive also has to be involved. So let me give you a brief run-through of what the budget-making process looks like. The budget-making process ideally starts on 30th of August every year. So that is the time when Treasury lays out a strategy for public participation. That is the process one, of course. Process number two is on 1st January, when the Commission for Revenue Allocation now sits down to lay out like a brief layout, really, of what the division of the national cake will look like at the end of at the time when the budget will be tabled. Now, fast forward to 15th of February, which is now process number 3, the Treasury CS is expected normally to table a budget policy statement in Parliament. What is this animal called the budget policy statement? It is simply a statement that gives the objectives, the outlines of what should be prioritized in that financial year's budget. And so, after the budget policy statement has been tabled, at around the end of February, Parliament is expected to normally sit down and deliberate on that proposed budget policy statement. Once the budget policy statement has been provided, Parliament either rubber stamps, which is approval, or does away with it. And we saw that happening last year when it was suspended by Parliament. Process number 5 is normally in 1st March, and it comes when the publication of the budget policy statement is normally made. Of course, that is for the public to interrogate, other civil societies to look at it, if it is approved and such kind. We'll move fast to process number 16, which normally happens on 16th March. As provided for in the Constitution, the Parliament passes the Division of Revenue Allocation, the Division of Revenue Bill rather, and also county also, tables their own allocation for revenue expenditure. Process number 7 is normally in April, the end of April, where Treasury submits the budget estimates for, of course, the Executive. The Judicial Service Commission also gives the budgetary allocations for that year, budget estimates for that year. And then also Parliament, the Parliamentary Service Commission equally gives their own. We have seen in this year's budget, the Parliament has been allocated 46 billion shillings, while the Judiciary has been allocated 17 billion. And the next process normally is on 30th of June, when Parliament passes the appropriations bill. Finally, the counties and Parliament pass the finance bills, which are equally just tools that allow the government to raise revenue and to appropriate and also finally give room for expenditure to happen. So that is a brief run through of the 9 processes that the budget goes through before it is tabled. That is why I'm on the streets here today, to talk to Kenyans on what the budget process looks like. Were they sufficiently involved? I'm now joined by James. James, karibu sana.
Nashukuru.
So langu la kwanza ni, unahisi kama serikali iliwahusisha sana nyinyi wa kama citizens katika ile process ya budget making?
La.
Mbona unasema hivyo?
Kwa sababu kama mtu kama mimi si kuhusishwa ama mahali nafanya, si kuona mtu wa serikali yote akuja kutuliza swali kuhusu bajeti ambayo inatangazwa sasa. Ya, kama kungekuwa na njia yenye ongeza kufika kwa raia, ingekuwa jambo la maana.
Unaona ni njia zipi ambazo serikali inaweza kukuza kule public participation ilmradi ili tuweze kuweka opinions za wananchi katika budget making?
Saizi kuna vitu mingi sana watu wanaweza tumia, kwa sababu kama vitu kama survey, saizi kila mtu anaingia kwa internet, wakiweka pale mtu akilogin anaweza weka opinion yake, yes or no. Ni kitu rahisi sana.
Tukimalizia, unafikiria serikali inafaa iangazie nini katika bajeti ya mwaka huu?
Bajeti ya mwaka huu sana sana mambo ya karo, afya na chakula. Hizo vitu vitatu. Nashukuru.
Shukran sana James, and that is a statement from one of the residents here in Nairobi who feels that the government has not really involved the public in the budget making process. So we'll be keeping an eye on this and we'll be telling you much more as the day goes by. We're giving you an end-to-end coverage of the budget making process and of course the highlights for today. Back to you in studio, Brenda.
All right, thank you so much, Brian George Otieno. And Dr. you've had it, you've been with me in studio since morning. You've heard what some of the people my colleagues have talked to have said. So let me pick your mind on what Honorable John Mbadi said. That hope that KRA is able to collect that 2 trillion shillings, then we borrow 1 trillion. How realistic is